Dr. Walker. And let me tell you why I said Miss Walker, because I have grown so comfortable with her. I just love her. Oh my gosh, I'm ready for you to share. Just, when people walk in their purpose and you know it and you're blessed by it, that's how I felt the first time that I went to see her. And I'll just share a little bit. I'm not going to take up your whole time because she has a lot that she can offer us. But I went to her because I was at my wit's end about my health. And her first session is 3 hours long. I went in thinking, I don't want to talk to anybody for 3 hours. I don't do 3 hour sessions. I didn't want to do a 3 hour session, but I had to keep an open mind because I was what? Desperate when I went to see her. And that 3 hours was so full of information. And my change was so drastic from when she saw me that when she actually met me in my full garb, she didn't even recognize me, did you? I was like, you don't recognize me. And she was like, Stockton said, what? What is this? Yeah. So let's get started today. Can you tell us about yourself and how your work aligns with the components of August Accountability?
I'm Japonica Walker. I'm a doctor of naturopathy. I believe my work aligns with August Accountability.
Pull your mic up.
With self-care. And we heard Yolanda speak about earlier, and just being accountable for who we are, right? And taking control over our destiny and what God has called us to do, and being accountable and determined and purposeful in doing that.
And so I asked her to join us this day for the spiritual quadrant, and I'll tell you why. It was because she spoke on a different level in terms of spirituality and our self-care, our health. Like, I look at it from, a cognitive mental health perspective, right, being in clinical psychology. And what do they tell you? If you go to a foot doctor, he's going to tell you what's wrong with your foot. Something going on with your heart, but he's going to focus on your foot, right? And so when I went to her, it was, what is she? A holistic doctor. It was the approach from it. So if you'll just talk to us a little bit, just share maybe some of the things that we talked about. I'm totally transparent. If I feel like you're going too far, I'll say, oh, yeah. But even, your relationship with God and how it has impacted your life, especially, as it's related to your recovery and.
Well, I think one of the things that we talked about, and I usually try to be transparent with any client or patient that I see, is it's been about 4 or 5 years ago that I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so that was a come to Jesus moment for me. And so it just really turned my faith upside down, and just, God, where are you in this? So I do believe in being very well-rounded. I am a holistic doctor, so it's like, okay, so I do believe in being balanced. I did seek out conventional, but I sought the Lord first. I was seeking the Lord through that, and just saying, God, I want to be practical. Here's an opportunity that I have the schooling about holistic and emotions. At that time, I didn't even know it was associated with emotions, but where are you in this? Where is this coming from? I knew enough about the body to know it wasn't just showing up. And so as I began to seek the Lord on, where are you in this? It really challenged my faith. Which way do I go? What decision do I make? So as God began to give me direction and perspective, where he was in it, he did show up. For me, I did walk through it holistically, not conventional. I decided to go natural. So I do share that because with my clients, because of the things that I learned through that trial, through that test, about we must take care of ourselves holistically. It's not just about, okay, let me just deal with the breast. God was saying, let's deal with the whole person, right? And so as I began to not focus, you're talking about a different perspective. He just completely gave a different perspective on how to deal with the cancer. So, and I'll say this boldly and unapologetically, that cancer was a gift. It still is. Yeah, so we began to share that, and as she shared her concern with me, and I presented a different perspective.
Yeah, I'm not going to cry. That's the intent. But I was so upset about that procedure. And Dr. Walker spends so much time. She said, you have regret. And I was like, no, I don't. I just make a decision, and either I learn from it or I benefit from it. I was real, She's like, but embarrassment is showing up. And I'm like, I don't get embarrassed. If I fall right here in front of y'all, I'm going to do a Beyonce pop up and do just what I need to do. I don't get embarrassed, But she did not let me slide around that. You just stayed in that. She stayed in it and figured out that I was embarrassed about what? The weight gain. And how that even, how you say, I feel out of fellowship? The reason we feel out of fellowship, and correct me if I'm wrong, the reason we feel out of fellowship is because we have things that are oppressing us. So God hasn't gone anywhere. It's what's weighing us down that's keeping us from being connected to him. And what she was able to do was show me where I was being weighed down and how that was robbing me of my peace.
Yes. Yes. And peace is one of the standards of God, that we're in right fellowship with him, right? And so when we lose our peace, now I'm so addicted to peace. It's like 5 seconds, okay, what? Wait a minute, Lord, what's going on? Did I turn left and I was supposed to turn right? So yes, dealing with the whole person, because a lot of time when we do get a diagnosis, even as believers, we're so afraid. Right? And it's easy to say we trust God when things are going well, when things are going our way. But, right, we learn how to trust God when that challenge comes, because that is a come to Jesus moment.
It is. It is. When your body does something that you're not accustomed to, it is a come to Jesus. Come right down, sit down at the throne. And that's when you really listen. And like you said, that's a gift.
Yes.
And I had never considered that illness was a gift.
Yes.
But it's just a higher level of awareness. Yolanda said it before. If you're the same person now that you were a year ago, you need to really sit down and look at your life. And I know coming through that, I'm not the same person, but I wasn't ready to deal with what all had happened. I'm just looking at it physically, but emotionally and spiritually, so much had happened in that recovery period that I hadn't taken the time to assess.
Yes. And sometimes we get so busy, right? I don't want to just blame it on being busy either. Sometimes that we kind of leave God out. We don't want to deal with what he's trying to say to us. And he's been telling us for a while through our bodies, through our mind and our emotions, and we just kind of rebuke it away, right? Put it in the closet and pretend like it's Satan, and it's not. And God said, I'm trying to get your attention here. We need to deal with some things. Oh, we're going to have church up in here today. Right? And so until we get to a place where God says, so you won't hear the little gentle knocks. So, okay. And it just gets louder and louder until it gets to a point where we're in crisis. We'll sit down and listen then, won't we? Right? And that's usually what it takes for us to be able to sit down and begin to listen to what the Lord has to say through a crisis. And it is a gift, because then we reevaluate where we are and what is God saying. He's usually saying you got to change.
Right.
You got to change some things.
Okay, so you guys see how I'm looking? Guilty. Right? I just had an appointment, was it last week or 2 weeks ago?
About 2 weeks ago.
About 2 weeks ago. And so I had self-analyzed and said, I think I'm reacting to Mimi leaving. I think I'm having a hard time with this, and I don't realize it. I'm out going. I went in there. I think I even texted that to you. Hey, I need to come in because I think I'm having a hard time with Taylor leaving. And we got in there, and it was another 3-hour session. I wasn't anticipating that, but it was revealing.
Yeah,
it was so revealing, and that was one of the things that I got from that day. I had signs way before I ended up on my back, laid, just sleeping, and your body was recovering. Yeah. And I had signs way before then that my body something was going on. And it was something simple, eating clean for 6 months, I think, 6-7 months, been doing really good, and just junked out. When I tell you I junked out one day, and my kidney said, no. And I didn't listen. So she said my body had to give me a crisis message, had to send out an urgent message, and that's when I said something's wrong. And that's her style. That's her style. And you feel so at peace when you come out of her office.
Good. Awesome.
Yeah. Yes, peace is important.
Peace is important, yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to something else. I'm gonna wrap back around to her appointments because I want you guys to know something else. But Here you go. And of course, everyone will know why I'm asking this question. If you had an appointment with a 17-year-old who's about to embark on life, what would be one of the things or some of the things that you would share with her about the connection between the spirit, the mind, and the body?
The first thing is self-value, because a lot of times we don't value who we are as a person. And so when we begin to understand the price that was paid for us, right? The price that was paid for us, then we will begin to look at ourselves a lot different, and that will lead to self-care. We'll do a better job of taking care of ourselves, spirit, soul, and body, right? Where we make ourselves a priority. And like Yolanda was saying earlier, put me some time on the schedule for me specifically, because I schedule it out for everybody else. And that self-care will also lead to self-respect. So the precious blood of Christ has paid for us to be whole, right? And so God is calling us to walk in our wholeness, because somebody needs to hear our message.
I'm sorry, I just had to take a deep breath, right? Because I tell people, if you don't take care of yourself, they're going to bury you, they're going to mourn you, and they're going to keep living.
Yes.
That's the bottom line. They will miss you, but they're going to keep living. So we have to take care of ourselves.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
It's a priority. And that's not being selfish.
No.
Right.
I think society has, something in society has told us that taking care of ourselves is not only selfish, but it can be sinful.
Yes.
And it's not taking care of ourselves that's sinful. It's what we do to take care of ourselves.
Yes.
Okay? So everything in moderation, right?
Balance.
Balancing it out. I can say I'm going to schedule some time for myself, but if I get up every day and neglect my responsibilities because I'm scheduling time to take care of myself, that's the imbalance of it all, right? That's when we know we're out of order, okay? All right. So what do you think, or what do you find women have a hard time reconciling when it comes to connection between the spirit and the body?
Their self-worth, how valuable we are as women, right? We see everybody else as being valuable because we pour a lot of time into our families, our jobs, our church, but while we're falling apart, right? Because we do think that's being selfish. I think we need to redefine how God looks at selfishness.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
I think we all got our definitions of what selfishness is.
We do.
Yeah.
And then what about in terms of taking care of our bodies? How is that spiritually irresponsible to not take care of our bodies?
You know, one of the examples I like to give, so we like nice cars, most of us, right? Right, so we'll put a lot of time and a lot of energy into that vehicle, and as soon as that vehicle, especially as women, it gives us a check engine light, we will be trying to find out what's going on, right? So just like we put a lot of value in our vehicles, this is the only vehicle you have, I have, that will take us, transport us from point A to point B, right? Take that nugget, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then, and this when I sat up in my seat in her office, she called me a crack baby. Because I had to tell her my normal food intake for the day, and it was full of what? Not chicken. That's one of my high school friends. It was full of sugar. And she said, "Oh, you're a crack baby." And I said, "Mm-hmm." She said, "That's like putting diesel fuel in that Buick you got out there, and it's supposed to be unleaded." Did that not make, I had to sit up in my seat. Because I had not thought about that.
It's all about perspective.
It's all about perspective. And so I didn't do a whole lot in terms of changing, but I did make it more of a fellowship with God in taking care of my body than I did about my physical appearances. And then I just looked up and I was like, "Oh, that dress not tight.
Right.
Oh, I can fit in these jeans." You see what I'm saying? Because what? I started focusing on God. versus self or what other people thought.
Yes.
So the way she ties it in spiritually is phenomenal. I just cannot, explain it enough in terms of how powerful it is that you're able to do that and make it very clear.
Holistic, right?
Being holistic, right. And so in the spiritual quadrant, we talk about your devotional time, we talk about your corporate fellowship, and we talk about your evangelism. Mm-hmm. What do you do in ministry work, whether it's in the church or outside of the church? So what do you think about that in terms of those three things in spirituality? Our devotional time, our corporate fellowship, because not everybody is engaged in corporate fellowship, True. And then our evangelism or our ministry work with other people.
I believe that the first thing we have to, in order to be balanced, it's very important that we spend that time with the Lord so we can get a download from God on what evangelism should look like that particular day. Because sometimes I know God is saying we just need to evangelize up in here today.
Yes.
Right? If there's some things that I need to deal with in my quiet time to be able to be prepared to go out and evangelize.
Right.
So
right. Get yourself together.
Right. Get myself together. So sometimes, and I know that we can get addicted or become addicted to being busy. Yeah, let me say that one, crackhead, right? We can become addicted to being busy. Somebody raising a hand. We all are. Yes, and so just taking that time to just get quiet. One of the scriptures as I walked through the journey with the diagnosis was be still and know that I'm God. Well, y'all saying amen. But I wasn't saying amen. Right. God was like, be still. And it was literally the way I felt. He was putting me in a corner.
Yeah, she put me in that corner. She said, Stacey, how often are you still? I said, I go to bed every night. She's like, no. So she actually had me practicing being still without falling asleep. That's something because I fall asleep. Look. There was a thumbs up from the audio crew. There you go. But actually being still without falling asleep was a challenge for me.
Yes. I think for most women it is. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Be still and know that I am God. Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to quote it.
But you have to, right.
Yes, it's another thing to walk it out
Embrace
and practice.
Yes.
It's another thing. It's like, God, you mean don't do nothing?
Right.
Don't do nothing.
Don't process your to-do list.
Yeah, one of the things.
Don't scroll social media.
One of the things that someone has shared with me during this time is like, as God was saying, be still and know that I'm God, and breaking that down. And someone had shared about a little boy, his mom had put him in the corner, and he said, I'm still standing up. I'm sitting down, but I'm still standing up. And that, he was still busy in his mind. Yes. And God said, you're still busy in your mind.
You're being hard-headed.
Right.
You're being hard-headed. Mm-hmm.
Addicted to being busy.
And do you think it's addiction? Because I'm going to process this. What I'm thinking is it becomes a pattern of behavior.
Yes.
It's because I can't say that. I've always been a road runner. They called me road runner growing up, and I've kept the same pace. And I get energy from being around people or what have you. And I think about that with corporate fellowship, that I love fellowshipping with other believers.
Yes.
And it is such a powerful component of who we are, and so many people are neglecting it. Yes. What do you think that does for us spiritually?
I believe corporate fellowship is vital. Even in that, we can become overweight, per se. Mm-hmm. That can also be a part of being too busy. Mm-hmm. It's being balanced, because we do need fellowship. We are the body of Christ, right? If I'm just a small part of I'm the small toe, right? Then I still need the rest of the foot to be able to function in a very balanced way, because the small toe cannot walk by itself.
That's true.
So corporate fellowship is very important, and it comes in many different facets. It's not just going to church. So when you and I met, that was corporate fellowship.
Right, right.
Right. That was corporate fellowship in a professional environment, but it was still centered around the Lord and what he was calling you to do, what he's calling us to do as a team.
That's good.
So, yeah.
It is. Can you share with us what you are, just a little bit, of what you have your patients read when they leave the office?
It's a couple things. One is a decree that was shared with me years ago with a client that was struggling with some health issues, and the Lord downloaded that to her. And it talks about how we are God's priority and how we need to be able to walk in what he's calling us to walk in. Another thing that I do, I also, depending on what's going on, usually on the first visit, we do some repenting about how we've treated God's priority, right? We apologize to the Lord and we apologize to ourselves about being disrespectful, and we also take communion.
I'm just taking a deep breath. Rose said it this morning, just deep, take a deep breath. And I think it took me 2 visits to get through the decree without crying. Because it is such an awareness of how disrespectful we are to our bodies and how disrespectful that is to God.
Yes.
And what he has blessed us with. And it was, like you said, another perspective.
Yes.
It was another perspective. You know, I know, if I want to live long. And, you know, to be honest with you, the reason I cut it out years ago with the weight and everything was because my husband, he has been solid from day one in terms of health, right? And I say that is so unfair of me not to take care of myself so that when we get older, he has to take care of himself and me. That's unfair. And I need to be more mindful of it. So that was what shifted the thinking. And then when I went to her, it shifted it again because my body didn't respond to what I had been doing for 2 years. Yes. Because what? My body had changed. She explained to me, you took out a major operating system in your body, and you expected it to just be the same. The pinky toe and the foot. Yes. It made sense. Mm-hmm. And so those are the kinds of things, when you go see Dr. Walker, you get from her, and that level of peace because she is walking in her purpose. Can you share with them the compilation that you're a part of, Soul Talk? Just explain a little bit about that. And
Soul Talk, I was invited as I journeyed through my walk with the diagnosis naturally. I was invited to share a part of my story with Cheryl Williamson in the Soul Talk group. So that's what I did because God had already called me to write about the story and to be able to not only share it with women, but share it with the church. Mm-hmm. That we've got to get back to who God really is, right? So it's easy for us to talk about, you know, we trust him when things are well, but when we have a crisis, that we really do need to get God's perspective. So when the way God set it up, because I was at a place where I was still dealing with quite a bit of fear. And as a holistic doctor, I knew that the medical community would look at me in such a way that it's like, wow, how could she make such claims? So I said, God, you're going to have to do this when you're ready for me to step out, because I know what's possible, you know, to be out there to deal with. So one night I was doing some work on the computer, and he said, I want you to work with Cheryl on another project. Not thinking, because I didn't think I was ready. Still dealing with a lot of fear. And so I text Cheryl and said, you know, God has told me to work with you on the next project. And I'm thinking, a couple $100 to support or whatever. And she called me right away. And she says, you were one of the ladies that God told me will be part of Soul Talk. Mm-hmm. It's like, what? So to share your story. She said, people need to hear your story. And so that's what I did, and it has been changing lives, touching lives. It's a different perspective, right? Definitely to consider God in any diagnosis. And it was a form of disrespect. Let's keep it real, right? It was a form of disrespect where I did not listen to God concerning my emotions. And we underestimate how powerful we are, right? So any type of symptomology that shows in our body is a come to Jesus moment, and it's some form, 85% statistically, is some form of self-disrespect. Yeah.
And when you read her contribution to the book, you're going to want more. Like, I laid that book down saying, it's more.
Yes.
And so you are working on your own book?
Yes, I am working on my own book. Definitely the whole story. And just being able to just provide the people of God just another perspective on what it could possibly look like to trust God. Your journey may be different, whatever. It could be a hysterectomy.
Yeah.
It could be lupus. It could be something as simple as I'm overweight, because we look at overweight or obesity, which is, running rampant in our nation.
Right.
It's something simple, but it's not. It's not. It's a lot of health issues that come along with obesity. So it's something as simple as that. Simple as that. Weight loss is just not weight loss.
Right.
Right. It starts with the mind
Right.
first.
Right.
It's just an outward expression of what's going on inwardly.
Internally.
Yeah.
Right. That's good. Thank you for joining us
Thank you
this
for
morning.
having
I
me.
hope that this has been helpful. Yeah. Because I think I hugged you the last time I came to the podium. Yeah, I'm just like, woo, I'm glad to be back. No. So hopefully you ladies have gotten something out of this as well. Thank you
Awesome.
for coming.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Stacia, for having me.